Covid-19. The virus, the pandemic. The end of daily life as we know it. UK and Ireland aviation is at rock bottom. Airlines will struggle to remain. Pilots will be paid off. Training will stop. Airports will close to non-essential travel. Aviation is left in the dust.
Hi, my name is Dylan. Oh, wait a second, let me just grab this jumper. I'm a solo filmmaker based in the heart of Scotland. Aside from filmmaking, I love aviation. I have worked in this sector as an aircraft dispatcher, sending people on holiday with well-known airlines. In my filmmaking role, I have filmed many aircraft types for my work, and aim to continue to, so long as the industry survives. So I am making it my mission to set off across the UK and Ireland to find out how pilots and other professionals coped with the sudden change and where they see the industry going. I want to know if there is a future in this sector for my own filmmaking and for those I admire most in aviation. As I leave my perfectly crafted coffee untouched, should have asked for tea, I head to Edinburgh to visit ex-Flybe captain Christo. He welcomes me for a chat about his experiences during COVID, work-based and otherwise, and what he's doing now after the ordeal.
So my name is Christo Hudson and I'm the founder of the Black Box Approach. We're a training organisation that deliver suicide and mental health training. I started actually off in the Air Force learning to fly. I got streamed fast jet but was told pretty quickly that that was not what was going to happen. I became a civilian, did an integrated training course to become a commercial pilot and then ended up working out of Edinburgh for 13 years with Flybe. Became a captain, then became a training captain, teaching new and sometimes experienced pilots how to fly the dash all around Europe. And then one of my last role within the organisation was as a flight data monitor. So I was looking at data from the black boxes and trying to work out what was really going on.
So Christo, I understand that you lost your job as a pilot during COVID times. Can you tell us a little bit about how that impacted you?
So it was, to be honest, it was completely life-changing. I remember coming back here, I'd been on a late double Manchester shift. I was training a guy for his final line check the next day. He had actually previously been made redundant from Thomas Cook 18 months beforehand. And I remember this, something's not right. And as it all unfolded that evening, finding out the company had gone to administration when we got back to Edinburgh Airport. I came back here and I remember standing there just over in the corner of this room here, just completely broken, not understanding what was going on. I remember my wife, saying to me, "You okay?" I was like, yeah, I'm fine. The typical macho, I'm fine. But inside, I just knew that was a pivotal moment in my life. And the next 5 months were a blur. We just had our 4th child. And my mental health just crashed and burned. really dodgy beard, and started drinking every bit of alcohol I could to basically numb that pain. And it completely changed my world.
I want to know more about Christo's journey, from COVID-stricken employment dismay to now helping those in need. I continue to ask Christo about his current position in new business. How would you describe your role now?
I don't know. I always come back to this thing of why I do what I do, and I just want people, particularly men, to feel more confident around talking about mental health. The subject of mental health in aviation, and particularly flight deck, is still so sensitive. It's still so sensitive, and it doesn't need to be.
So, do you see a future in aviation? If so, do you think it's a positive or a negative one?
Absolutely, I definitely think it's a positive future, but it's a very, very different outlook. We look at recruitment now, particularly into airlines as flight deck and cabin crew, and it is absolutely bouncing back. But I think it has given people that bit of perspective of, okay, if they were on the cusp of thinking, do I want to do this forever for the rest of my life? Perhaps the pandemic was that kick that they perhaps needed to go in one certain direction or another. There are people definitely like myself who've left actual flying because perhaps a different other door has been opened. But I know that there are those that are still a bit concerned about going back into the industry because that fear of it happening again, the fact that T's and C's have apparently been stripped, and that why would I want to put myself in a position like that again? I think the pandemic has taught everyone that it is genuinely about the journey and not the destination, and that life can be short. It's definitely taught me that, and perhaps a bit of different perspective on how much of a role our job and our job title plays in our lives.
Thank you so much for your time, Christo.
Genuinely my pleasure.
As I leave Christo in Edinburgh, I decide to look further afield to see how COVID-19 impacted those in other areas. So I head to Ireland, to a simulator training centre who train pilots in the final stages of their commercial training and prepare them for airline employment. Here I meet Killian, who chats about the challenges the company and their students faced as COVID struck right at the end of their crucial flight training phases and pivotal point in their careers.
My name is Killian Hanratty. I'm the sales manager and channel partner at Simtech Aviation here in Dublin.
Killian, can you tell me a little bit about how COVID impacted you and the business?
I think COVID kind of came out of nowhere. It was a bit of a shock. It was very much from the industry point of view, an immediate shutdown. And throughout then COVID, we continued training as pilots were considered essential workers. So regulatory wise, they have to continue their training, they have to do line checks, they have to do refreshers, and revalidations. So from that point of view, we were a lot slower in terms of a lot quieter, but we were actually kept busy with the airlines who had to complete their training and keep their pilots ready and fresh at all times.
So what do you think about the future of the aviation industry?
I think the industry itself is very much on the rebound. There's still a little bit of people kind of teetering around just when that will happen. But we've seen one or two airlines in particular have done big recruitment pushes. Particularly with the low-cost carriers, they're usually the first out of the traps when it comes to job recruitment. So that's very positive for cadets or guys who've recently graduated and recently completed their pilot training. So we are seeing now a number of other airlines which is having a knock-on effect in the overall job recruitment. So I do see the industry as a whole recovering very quickly, and in a way it might actually be recovering a lot quicker than the airline industry is actually ready for. So we are seeing delays which have been improved in airports, but we're also seeing airlines now understaffed when it comes to pilots and cabin crew. So as always, COVID was a difficult time for pilots, experienced and non-experienced, but it also allows cadets now who are coming out of the door to basically get ready to go straight into an airline who'll need them.
With now a good understanding of how a simulator training centre, such as Simtech, bounced back after COVID-19, it's time to head back to Edinburgh, where I think it's time I try out some flying for myself. I meet with Tom, a keen aviator and aircraft owner, who has bravely agreed to give me a trial flight around the area. He gives me a brief of what to expect on our flight from his apartment block in the town centre, before we head up to Dundee Airport, where his Grob aircraft is kept in a hangar.
Just as important as anything. I don't know why, but I'm starting to try. Shifting my head's got me feeling alright. It's for the better. I need to slow down. Easier than ever to live without. Don't want it out loud. Feeling it inside. Give me the full picture. I wanna see something complete. Come a bit closer. There's nothing quite like it. Taking me over. Placid lightning. Never been closer. There's nowhere I'd rather be
So from Victor Hotel Echo Steps, wind 22012 knots, runway 27 clear takeoff.
Runway 27 clear takeoff, Golf Hotel Echo. Good to go?
Yeah.
Dundee Tower 2545 Delta.
So, during COVID, do you think that you got as much flying done in 2020? How do you think it affected you?
Well, I probably did a lot less in 2020
Yeah.
compared to normal. So, I'd say normal I'd probably do about maybe 80 hours or so
Right,
a year, light aircraft flying.
okay.
In 2020 I did, I don't know, probably 10 or something.
Wow, that really, wow.
So yeah, quite a bit less.
That's a
obviously,
lot
than,
less.
than normal, yeah.
Wow. I have worked with private aircraft in my filmmaking, so I have a very strong connection to finding out about the COVID impacts here. Naturally, I asked Tom some questions on how COVID-19 impacted him personally.
Okay, 4,000 feet. 4,000 feet, yes.
So, do you have a lot planned for this year then, 2022? But you've just been to America,
Yeah,
haven't you?
Yeah, I've been to America, so done some private flying over there.
Nice.
So want to try and do another America trip later on in the year, and then obviously still do some Grob flying and
Yeah.
stuff.
Do you usually go to Vegas?
Yeah,
Or you even start in Vegas?
Vegas or just wherever, to be honest.
Right, okay.
So I've done like Florida, New York, Atlanta, so try and mix it up.
Yeah.
But I've been to Vegas a couple of times to fly, so yeah, it's
So I guess during COVID then you couldn't do that either. Did you have any plans for that?
yeah, exactly. I was meant to go to Vegas in 2020,
Right.
but yeah, obviously that was postponed.
Yeah. Yeah. So, so you managed to get it done this year, so that's pretty good. That you,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
As we land back in Dundee, I thank Tom for speaking with me and letting me give this flying stuff a go for myself. Whilst in the area, I decide to head to Perth Airport to talk to a flight training academy where I sometimes film aircraft from about their experiences with COVID-19. General Manager Bruce agrees to chat with me about their COVID story and sheds light on his take of the future.
My name's Bruce Duguid and I'm the General Manager of ACS Aviation. We look after Perth Airport, we are the operators. We're also ACS Flight Training, and as the title suggests, we train people to fly. And we also have ACS Engineering.
So how did COVID-19 impact the staff and the students at ACS?
I mean, the initial lockdown had a huge impact on us, and all flight training had to stop, and that was back in March 2020. That had a huge impact. A lot of students were in progress. There was a lot who had to stop. Obviously, we had all instructors. They had to stop flying. They had to be furloughed. The only part of the business that remained open was the engineering department. We kept them open, and we opened that right the way through all of the lockdowns. We were then able to start flight training, as I said, end of July, beginning of August in 2020, but that was purely commercial flight training to start with. We weren't allowed recreational flying, and recreational flying at that time was still stopped. The impact on the wider aviation industry was enormous. As we know, all flights were stopped, airports were lying empty, and people were made redundant. Compound that with the collapse of Flybe in February 2020. There was also all of those pilots as well. Two of our students particularly, they had both just landed jobs with Flybe and both of them flew less than a month and were made redundant.
So what's the outlook now for ACS students and perhaps the overall aviation industry?
We've had a lot of students recently who have secured jobs with mostly local airlines. Logan Air have snapped up a lot of our students. Yeah, it's good. The atmosphere, there's a real positive energy amongst our students now. A lot of them, obviously, there was trepidation about whether we're going to get a job when we get our licenses. Now it's, where are we going to get a job? If you look at it now, airlines are recruiting everywhere, and I think we'll be able to supply enough good quality students for them.
From flight training to flying holidaymakers like you and I to sunny Spain and beyond, I decide to conclude my research with a current captain in the industry. I meet with Glasgow Airport-based pilot, Captain Phil Tett, who flies for a major UK-based airline. I want to find out what it's like to be in the industry now, as a current airline pilot in 2022, from a seasoned and current captain. This will help shape my overall vision of aviation future.
My name's Phil Tett. I'm a 737 captain based out of Glasgow, and I've been doing that for about 10 years.
So can you describe a little bit about your role now and also your experience in aviation?
I'm a line captain, and I also do ground training, crew resource management and fatigue training, and just recently started doing mental health awareness training within the airline. I first started flying around about 1983. I was flying with the Air Force, the Royal Air Force, in 1983, got my commission. Then went through flying training, got my wings with the Royal Air Force in 1986. After having flown on Jet Provost, did a bit of time on the Hawk, and then came back to the Jetstream, and went on to multi-engines and ended up on the Nimrod's MR2.
So how did COVID impact you and your work, do you think?
I think COVID was a surprise. When we started to get news reports that COVID was a thing, I think most of us were in a little bit of a disbelief that it would affect us. I think we've had, up until that point, a fairly good 10 years in aviation where particularly the company that I'm working for had done very well. And we kind of considered, oh, we'll ride this one. It won't be as bad, particularly since I think previous sort of pandemics have never really emerged. We'd never experienced a pandemic. And then as the news worsened, we kind of thought, well, okay, what's the company going to do? Because the government were talking about restrictions. And then all of a sudden, bang. I think very quickly most of us realised this is going to last and it's not going to suddenly right itself. And we went into those lockdowns, those early lockdowns, really, where there was a lot of uncertainty. And certainly I myself started to really get concerned and anxious about my job. How am I going to pay the bills? Because pilots are fairly well paid, and we all expand into our wages. We all have debts, mortgages, families to support. I had 2 children at home at the time, and all of a sudden that weight of responsibility, quite how I'm going to, if I lost my job, keep things ticking over, was a big worry.
So Phil, where do you see the industry going now in 2022? What's your thoughts on that?
It's a good question, and I wish I could come up with a crystal ball answer, because we're all, I think, in the industry concerned with how we're going to deal with this summer. There are shortfalls of staff. I personally have not seen any problems with the company recruiting people back in. Some pilots have taken early retirement, the guys perhaps in their 60s, and maybe 1 or 2 have decided that the industry is just not an industry they want to work in anymore, because it is subject to these kind of rises and falls. But people have generally come back because people love to fly. Flying is a passion. The problem is at the moment is getting, particularly with the cabin crew, security clearances. Most of the pilots were kept on, and it's just getting them back up to speed. And after 2 years off, I know there is a number of people who have really struggled to re-find a suitable level of ability and currency. I see it very positive. People still need to fly. We can't live in a virtual world. We still need face-to-face. Humans need face-to-face. People like to travel. The will is there. There's a massive will, which is why we've got the issues at airports now, because people want to go back on holiday. The holiday for them is an annual wind down, and it's well deserved after they've been working hard all year. To take a break, it's an important part of their mental well-being. The industry is moving forward with lots of technical innovations, better fuel economies, better ways of dealing with higher capacity air traffic flows, keeping the aircraft going. All that's in place, but what now needs to be in place is dealing with humans operating the industry and making sure that they're in their best state of well-being, because when you're fatigued or if you're not having a good day mentally, then you're not going to provide the efficient service that the equipment is up to allowing.
I believe I've gathered enough research to conclude my mission, to find out how Covid-19 impacted the industry and where it seems to be headed. From discussing how the pandemic led some to new beginnings, to seeing how others see their future firmly in the skies, I conclude that there is indeed a future in aviation, both for me as a filmmaker of aircraft and to those who currently work in the industry as pilots, trainers, mental health coaches, flight academies, and so much more. It's safe to say that the future may well be uncertain, but nevertheless, aviation is here to stay, for better or for worse, in sickness and in health.
I'm Christo Hudson.
I'm Bruce Duguid.
I'm Phil Tett.
And
I see a future in aviation.